So let me start by asking you, when we're talking about this particular case, what do you think the court is going to decide?
Well, of course, it's very hard to speculate on what a court is going to decide. It'll probably be a divided court. I don't think we'll have a unanimous ruling either way. But certainly very strong arguments were made today saying that basically the government just does not have a good reason for denying these committed New York couples the protections, the responsibilities, and the legal commitment of marriage.
Now, Attorney General Eliot Spitzer, who of course we know is running for governor, has issued a legal opinion that while New York law doesn't permit same-sex couples to marry here, it has to recognize legal same-sex marriages that are performed elsewhere. Recently he said, quote, that the state has a legitimate interest in channeling opposite-sex relationships into marriage. Do you believe that Spitzer is going to get behind changing the law if he were to become governor?
Well, absolutely. Attorney General Spitzer has made very clear that personally he believes that the discrimination in marriage is wrong and ought to end, and he has pledged that if elected governor, he also will work very hard to end this exclusion from marriage. But while he's Attorney General, he has an obligation to defend the law and to bring the case before the court.
Now, New York is one of a handful of states, though, that hasn't taken any legislative action for or against same-sex marriage, although there are some bills that are pending in Albany, both to ban it and also to allow it. Do you think that the legislature will ever get behind the idea of same-sex marriage?
I think if the legislature is called to act, it will act because as it's becoming clearer and clearer every day, there is no good reason for this discrimination. It hurts families and it helps no one. Polls show that a majority of New Yorkers now support ending the exclusion from marriage. They recognize that gay couples, like the 44 couples before the court in court today, are forming families, are taking on legal commitment, are worrying about their aging parents, are raising children. They have all the same reasons for wanting these protections that come with marriage and for wanting to make the important personal statement of love and commitment and dedication that marriage represents. On the other side, the government has just shown no good reason. Today, the government's arguments literally were that heterosexuals sometimes have accidental procreation. That's what the attorney said. And that's the reason that they should be allowed to marry, but gay couples should not, which is just simply nonsense. And the other argument that the state put forward was to say that while gay people maybe should have the right to marry, the court should not make that ruling, but instead the gay couples should be forced to go to the New York legislature and see what they can get out of it.
Well, let's talk about the reasoning behind all this, because I can tell you, we talk about this issue all the time on the program, and the other side says marriage is under attack, and it's important that we preserve the sanctity of that union. How is same-sex marriage a threat to traditional marriage?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and I hope you ask that to all these opponents because they never have an answer to it. The fact of the matter is it doesn't threaten anybody's marriage to allow the couple across the street to get married. Gay couples have been getting married in Canada, in Spain, in Massachusetts, in Holland, in Belgium, and you know what? They haven't used up the marriage licenses. There's plenty of marriage left for non-gay couples to share, and the fact that one family gets a measure of respect and protection, and the kids are told that their family is a real family, and that this is a legal union and it's going to be honored with responsibilities, does nothing to take anything away from anybody else.
Are you surprised by the depth of emotion that this debate stirs up? I mean, you wrote a book called Why Marriage Matters, America, Equality, and Gay People's Right to Marry. And in that you talk about how there's sort of three factions here. There are the people that are adamantly for gay marriage, there are the people that are adamantly against it, and then there's people in the middle who I guess haven't really formed their opinion yet. Is there a way to find some common ground when it comes to this issue?
Yes, absolutely. The way to find common ground is to have more discussion, for more people to push past their discomfort. They're not wanting to talk about this, not wanting to think about it, maybe being a little uncomfortable about homosexuality, and actually look at these couples and listen to their stories. And as Americans are doing that, which takes time, they are moving in the direction of favoring an end to this discrimination.
But you know, as I do,
10 years ago,
the argument, though, that I often hear when we have this conversation is it goes back to a biblical thing, and God created Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, and so therefore this is the way that it was meant to be and this is the way it shall be forevermore. How do you change that kind of mindset?
Well, of course, one answer is to say, well, who created Steve then? But the important answer here is that we're not asking people to change their religious views. People are entitled to have whatever religious views they want in America. And there are religious voices in support of gay people and ending discrimination in marriage. And there are religious voices on the other side, just as there were religious voices on both sides of slavery, on both sides of ending race discrimination, on both sides of ending sex discrimination against women. Religions are entitled to have different views. That's part of the greatness of America. But another part of the greatness of America is that we don't use the government as a weapon to impose one religious view on others. And the question before the court today, and the question before the American people, is under the law, should the government be allowed to discriminate in the issuance of marriage licenses? Government doesn't issue bar mitzvah licenses. It doesn't issue communion licenses. But it issues marriage licenses because marriage is a legal institution. And when it comes to legal institution with legal rights and legal responsibilities, no religious views should be dictating who gets that legal marriage license from the government, just as the government should not be telling religions who they can marry. This is not about forcing religions to decide this or that or to change their views. This is about equality under the law and fairness for these families here in New York.
And finally, one more question then about the government. As you know, the federal marriage amendment will be voted on next week, and the president is expected to throw his support behind it. Do you think that that marriage amendment will pass? And if so, what is the impact of that going to be?
In more than 200 years, our Constitution has never been used as a weapon of discrimination, has never been amended so as to take rights away from the American people. It is shocking and appalling that politicians in Washington are willing to play with fire near the Constitution. Of course it is not going to pass. It's an outrage that we're even talking about cementing discrimination into the Constitution, which is there to protect all of us and to be a protection of checks and balances to keep the government from interfering in fundamental American freedom and fundamental equality, which belongs to everybody.
All right, Evan Wolfson, author of Why Marriage Matters and executive director of Freedom to Marry. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us to talk about this issue.
Thank you. Anytime.